The Concorde's spire orbited a dead star, its silver lattice catching nothing but darkness. That, Commander Elias Rourke thought, was fitting. Everything important here happened in shadows. The council chamber stretched wider than any human parliament ever built. Platforms, nests, liquid pools, and hovering fields accommodated hundreds of species at once. Gravity varied by section. Atmospheres overlapped in carefully regulated bands. The galaxy had spent centuries perfecting compromise. Humans sat in reinforced seats along the inner ring. Simple. Unremarkable. Purposefully so. Rourke adjusted his posture by a fraction of a degree, locking his boots more firmly against the deck. The chamber's gravity was lighter than Earth's standard, tuned for the comfort of the majority. To humans, it felt like standing with one foot on a lie. Comfortable enough to forget, dangerous enough to misstep. Across the chamber, voices rose and fell in a dozen frequencies. Logistical reliability remains humanity's greatest contribution, chirped a delegate from the Seleth Collective. Their adaptability in administrative roles is admirable. Admirable. Rourke almost smiled. They are useful intermediaries, added another voice, wet and resonant. Emotionally expressive. That trait eases negotiations between more disciplined species. Rourke kept his face neutral. Admiral Chen, seated 2 chairs down, didn't even blink. Years of practice had burned reactions out of them both. Above, holographic data scrolled through the air, projections of trade routes, defense allocations, and threat assessments. Humanity's marker hovered at the edge of the display. Present. Peripheral. Non-essential. The speaker node pulsed, signaling a new address. High Strategos Viral Kothex rose from his elevated dais, his tall, angular frame unfolding with ritual precision. The Carthel leader's exoskeletal plates caught the chamber light, sharp and immaculate. His species evolved on cold, low-gravity planes. Fragility hidden behind structure. Rourke had read the files. Honored delegates, Kothex began, his voice smooth and amplified through translation fields. We gathered to reassess defense responsibilities along the eastern spiral. Rourke felt the shift before Kothex said the word. Humanity. Several delegates turned. Some curious. Some amused. Kothex inclined his head slightly toward the human section. For decades, we have indulged the presence of Deathworlders in matters of strategic security. A courtesy born of sympathy, not necessity. A ripple of soft laughter moved through the chamber. Rourke finally leaned forward. Kothex continued. Their worlds breed chaos. Unstable climates. Predatory ecosystems. Such conditions do not forge discipline. They create reaction. Improvisation. Emotional decision-making. He paused, letting the words settle. The Carthel Dominion proposes a restructuring. Humans will retain advisory roles. Mediation. Supply coordination. But military authority must rest with species equipped for it. Silence followed. Not opposition. Consideration. The speaker node pulsed green. Rourke stood. He did not raise his voice. High Strategos, Rourke said evenly. Humanity has never requested authority beyond what was granted by unanimous Concord vote. Kothex's mandibles flexed. Votes given in fear of your history. Our history, Rourke replied, is precisely why restraint defines our policy. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. Restraint was not how the Concord described humans. Useful. Emotional. Survivors. But restraint implied choice. Kothex tilted his head. An admirable reframing. Rourke met his gaze. We learned long ago that power revealed too quickly invites misunderstanding. And power concealed invites suspicion. Kothex countered. Tell me, Commander. What exactly are you hiding? Rourke held the silence just long enough to be noticed. Nothing that threatens the Concord, he said. Kothex clicked softly, the Carthel equivalent of a smile. You see? Always the diplomat. The node dimmed. Kothex sat. The chamber moved on. Resource quotas. Patrol rotations. Minor border skirmishes that cost species with shorter lifespans more lives than humans lost in a decade. Rourke listened, cataloging tone, posture, omission. The attack had not been spontaneous. It had been measured. Admiral Chen leaned closer, her voice barely audible. They're circling. They think we won't notice, Rourke said. Or won't act. Rourke watched Kothex confer with his aides. They're not wrong. Not yet. The session recessed 2 hours later. Delegates dispersed in clouds, currents, and silence. Humans remained seated until the chamber cleared. Tradition. Appear patient. Appear deferential. Rourke's wrist implant vibrated once. Encrypted. Priority crimson. He read the message without changing expression. Carthel fleet movement detected. Designated as training exercise. Proximity violation logged. Frontier system H417. A Deathworld colony. High gravity. Seismic storms. Population barely 50,000. Chen saw his jaw tighten. That bad? They're close enough to be seen from orbit, Rourke said. Close enough to make a point. And still claim innocence. Rourke rose, straightening his uniform. Around them, human delegates moved with the same quiet efficiency. No panic. No raised voices. As they exited the chamber, Kothex's voice carried from behind. Commander Rourke. Rourke turned. Kothex approached alone, towering, immaculate. You should advise your people to remain calm. Displays of fear would only validate concerns. Rourke studied him. Up close, the strategos smelled faintly of antiseptic and cold metal. A species unused to sweat. Hi, strategos, Rourke said. Humans learned calm before we learned fire. Kothex laughed softly. Then perhaps you will survive what comes next. Rourke held his gaze. We always do. Kothex turned away, satisfied. Rourke walked on. As the spire's transit corridor sealed behind the human delegation, Chen finally exhaled. They really think we're bluffing. Rourke looked out through the transparent alloy at the dead star beyond. No, he said. They think we're hiding because we're afraid. And we are. Rourke's reflection stared back at him. Scarred. Controlled. Still. We're hiding, he said. Because once the mask comes off, it never goes back on. Another vibration pulsed against his wrist. Updated sensor data. Fleet trajectories tightening. Rourke closed his eyes for a single heartbeat. The test had begun. The planet's gravity pressed down like a living thing, heavier than standard, heavier than comfort. Storm systems braided across its continents in permanent motion, electrical veins flashing through iron-rich clouds. The colony sat inside a carved basalt valley, walls reinforced against seismic shifts that came without warning. To the Concord, it was an outpost. To humans, it was home. Rourke watched the storm feed scroll across the command display aboard the HES Resolute. Atmospheric pressure spiked, then settled. The colonists would barely notice. Any civilian movement? He asked. Minimal, Lieutenant Imani said. They're staying indoors. Same as always. Same as always. Humanity didn't flinch at danger, it scheduled around it. The Carthel fleet emerged at the edge of the system an hour later. 12 vessels. Heavy hulls. Formation too precise for coincidence. Their drives burned cold blue, optimized for vacuum combat, not planetary proximity. They stopped just outside the exclusion boundary, close enough to be unmistakable. A message followed within seconds. Notice of military training operations. No hostile intent declared. Rourke let the silence stretch before responding. Open channel, he said. Kothex appeared in the projection, framed by polished alloy and Dominion insignia. He looked almost relaxed. Commander Rourke, Kothex said. Apologies if our presence startles your settlers. Our simulations require varied gravitational conditions. You chose a populated system, Rourke replied. A minor population, Kothex said smoothly. And one uniquely suited to stress testing. Rourke glanced at the colony data. Schools sealed. Power grids hardened. Emergency shelters stocked. The settlers had drilled for worse than this. "You're violating proximity accords," Rourke said. "Within acceptable margins," Kothex answered. "Unless the Concord suddenly redefines them." "Funny," Rourke said. "They were clear last century." Kothex's eyes narrowed. "Standards evolve. Species adapt." Rourke ended the channel. Imani exhaled. "They want a reaction. They want precedent," Rourke said. "Fear gives them both." Hours passed. Carthel's ships ran maneuvers, bright arcs cutting across space. No weapons fire. No direct threats. Just presence. The oldest tactic in the galaxy. On the surface, a child watched the sky darken with unfamiliar silhouettes and asked her father if the stars were angry. "They're just passing through," he told her. And meant it. Back aboard the Resolute, Rourke's wrist implant chimed. "Secure priority. Earth command." The projection shifted, replacing the tactical display with a familiar face. Director Halvorsen looked older than his last briefing. Gravity did that to people who spent their lives under it. "You're seeing this?" Halvorsen asked. "In real time," Rourke said. "The Concord's already drafting statements," Halvorsen said. "Carefully neutral language. Neutral favors the one applying pressure." Halvorsen didn't argue. "We're divided here. Some want to file formal protests only. Others want you to pull back. And leave the colony alone with them? Leave them unprovoked," Halvorsen said. Rourke's jaw tightened. "That's not what this is." "No," Halvorsen admitted. "But escalation has consequences. So does submission." A pause. Halvorsen's voice dropped. "You know what authorization you're asking for." "I know," Rourke said. "I'm not asking yet." The channel closed. The first strike came without warning. A Carthel drone crossed the exclusion line, its path erratic, its signal flagged as malfunctioning. Colonial defense systems tracked it automatically. Rourke saw the data before anyone else spoke. "Don't fire," he said. The drone detonated above the logistics platform at the valley's edge. The blast was controlled, directional. Storage containers ruptured. A fuel line ignited. No fatalities. 3 injuries. All minor. Kothex's message followed instantly. "Unfortunate accident. Apologies issued." Imani slammed her fist into the console. "They planned that." "Yes," Rourke said. "And they limited it." "Why?" "Because they're not testing our weapons," Rourke said. "They're testing our threshold." Surface feeds showed colonists moving with calm efficiency. Fire suppression engaged. Medics deployed. No screams. No chaos. The image unsettled even Rourke, and he'd grown up with earthquakes. Kothex requested a private channel. Rourke accepted. "Regrettable," Kothex said, mandibles drawn tight in what passed for sincerity. "Your people handled it admirably." "They always do." Kothex leaned closer to the projection. "You see, Commander, this is precisely my point. Your species is resilient, yes. But resilience is not dominance." "You confuse the two often?" Rourke asked. Kothex ignored the jab. "The Concord fears instability. I offer structure. Your kind offers unpredictability. The choice is obvious. You're manufacturing instability," Rourke said. Kothex's eyes gleamed. "I'm revealing it." Rourke studied him. "You're very confident." "I've run the simulations," Kothex said. "Every variable. Human psychology included." "Then you missed something." Kothex tilted his head. "Enlighten me." Rourke's voice stayed even. "Humans don't escalate when they're afraid." "And when do they?" Kothex asked. "When they're certain." Kothex smiled. "Certainty requires power." "No," Rourke said. "It requires acceptance." The channel cut. Imani stared at him. "Sir, what does that mean?" Rourke watched the Carthel fleet resume formation, tighter now. Closer. The storm systems below raged on, indifferent. It means, he said quietly, they think we're deciding whether to fight. And we are. Rourke shook his head. We're deciding when to stop pretending this is a misunderstanding. Alerts chimed across the bridge. Concord traffic surged. Diplomatic pings stacked faster than the system could prioritize them. Rourke didn't answer. He pulled up the colony casualty report. No deaths. The Carthel had been careful. Cruel, but precise. That made it worse. Rourke keyed a message to Earth Command. Short. Unambiguous. Threshold crossed. Provocation confirmed. Recommend escalation review. He didn't send it immediately. He watched the colony feeds once more. A woman sweeping shattered glass from a corridor. A child laughing as gravity shifted under a passing shockwave. They trusted him to keep the sky honest. Rourke sent the message. Outside, the Carthel fleet adjusted its orientation, weapons still cold, presence louder than any broadcast. They were waiting. And for the first time in a very long while, humanity was done waiting with them. The emergency session convened without ceremony. The Concorde spire dimmed its ambient glow, drawing attention inward as delegates assembled across platforms and fields. Translation matrices flared to life. The broadcast indicator pulsed red, galaxy-wide. No edits. No delay. Whatever happened here would be remembered exactly as it occurred. Commander Elias Rourke stood alone at the human position. Admiral Chen remained planetside, coordinating relief. This was a political battlefield now, and Rourke had been sent to hold it. High Strategos Viral Kothex spoke first. Delegates, he began, voice steady. Recent events have confirmed long-standing concerns. Humanity's instability has now endangered neutral space. A cascade of data appeared above the chamber. Footage of the H-417 incident. Cropped angles. Isolated flames. A pause frame of the detonating drone. Kothex gestured. This was not a hostile act. It was a malfunction exacerbated by human defensive negligence. A murmur rippled outward. Rourke watched the edits scroll by, noting what had been removed, the early warning logs, the restraint orders, the absence of counterfire. Kothex continued. Worse, intelligence suggests humanity has concealed military capacities from the Concorde. Deception, delegates. On a strategic scale. Several representatives shifted. Fear traveled faster than reason. The Dominion therefore proposes immediate sanctions, Kothex said. Human defense authorities suspended pending investigation. Their fleets confined to core territories. The speaker node pulsed. A voice rose from the upper tiers. If these allegations are true, how can we trust them? Another followed. Concealment implies intent. Rourke inhaled slowly. He felt the weight of 1,000 assumptions pressing down, heavier than any death world gravity. The node pulsed green. Rourke stepped forward. High Strategos Kothex, he said, has presented a narrative. Kothex inclined his head. Facts, Commander. Curated ones, Rourke replied. But let us address the accusation directly. The chamber quieted. Yes, Rourke said. Humanity has withheld information. A sharp intake of breath echoed from several sections. We did so, he continued, with the full knowledge of our leadership and the consent of our people. Kothex's mandibles clicked. An admission. A clarification, Rourke said. We concealed capabilities because revealing them prematurely would destabilize this alliance. Convenient, Kothex said. Necessary, Rourke replied. Your species evolved on predictability. Ours did not. He gestured, and the projection shifted. Earth appeared, scarred blue, alive. Human history is a record of collapse survived, Rourke said. Pandemics. Wars. Environmental failures. We did not endure by perfection. We endured by adaptation. Images followed. Cities rebuilt. Systems rerouted. Populations relocating under fire and flood. We learned early that survival is not about avoiding catastrophe, Rourke said. It's about functioning during it. A delegate interrupted. Then why hide? Rourke met the voice. Because every time humanity revealed its full strength on our homeworld, someone tried to erase us for it. Silence settled, dense and uncomfortable. Kothex broke it. You expect sympathy? No, Rourke said. Understanding. The speaker node pulsed again. Another voice, hesitant. If this concealment was benign, why now? Rourke closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. Because the cost of hiding has changed, he said. He raised his wrist. Earth Command, he said calmly. I am requesting authorization theta. The chamber froze. Kothex's posture stiffened. You dare escalate this forum into theater? This isn't theater, Rourke said. It's disclosure. Seconds stretched. Then the projection shifted. Director Halvorsen appeared, flanked by uniformed figures Rourke recognized instantly. Fleet Command. Bioengineering. Strategic Doctrine. Authorization theta granted, Halvorsen said. Effective immediately. Full transparency permitted. The broadcast indicator flared brighter. Kothex stepped forward. You're making a mistake. Rourke didn't look at him. The projection changed again. Data streamed, unfiltered. Human physiological metrics appeared first. Bone density. Muscle fiber composition. Neural response under trauma. Pain thresholds recalibrated against Concord baselines. Gasps echoed. Humans evolved under gravity levels most of you cannot tolerate, Rourke said. Our cardiovascular systems are reinforced. Our musculoskeletal structures compensate for constant strain. The data shifted. Combat simulations. Environmental tolerance. Prolonged function under deprivation. We operate efficiently under conditions you classify as lethal, Rourke said. Not because we enjoy it. Because we had no alternative. Kothex snarled. Biology does not equal supremacy. Correct, Rourke said. Doctrine does. New projections replaced the old. Tactical models. Human fleet maneuvers. Adaptive command structures responding in real time to unpredictable variables. Human military doctrine does not rely on rigid hierarchy, Rourke said. It relies on decentralized decision-making. A Carthel analyst shouted from the tiers. That breeds chaos. Rourke nodded. Controlled chaos. The kind that survives first contact. Kothex's voice cut sharp. You are threatening the Concord. Rourke turned to him at last. No, he said. We are removing a misunderstanding. He tapped a control. The chamber's sensors screamed. Space warped. Something vast and silent unfolded beyond the spire's viewports. Not emerging from hyperspace with flare or spectacle, but slipping into presence as if it had always been there and simply chosen to be noticed. Human vessels. Dozens. Hundreds. Their profiles were wrong, too dense, too compact. No decorative architecture. No intimidation arrays. Just mass and intent. They held position. Weapons cold. Drives idle. The room shook, not physically, but perceptually, as sensor systems recalibrated in disbelief. Kothex stared, rigid. Rourke spoke softly, his voice carrying without amplification. This fleet has been within response range for the last 3 engagements you've initiated, he said. They were ordered not to intervene. Kothex turned slowly. You could have destroyed us. Yes, Rourke said. And chose not to. A delegate whispered, audible even through translation lag. Why? Rourke faced the chamber. Because power exercised without restraint becomes tyranny, he said. And humanity has lived under tyrants. The fleet outside remained still. Waiting. Kothex's certainty fractured. You expect us to believe this restraint will continue? Rourke held his gaze. It will, he said. As long as it remains a choice. The chamber stayed silent, the weight of revelation pressing into every corner. The mask had not shattered. It had been set down. And nothing in the galaxy would ever see humanity the same way again. The silence that followed revelation was heavier than any gravity field. The Concorde Spire's sensors stabilized slowly, recalibrating around what they now acknowledged as reality. Human ships hung in formation beyond the viewport, unadorned, compact, patient. They did not advance. They did not threaten. Their stillness was more unnerving than movement. High Strategos Viral Kothex was the first to speak, though his voice lacked its former precision. This is posturing, he said, but the words fell flat, hollow even to him. Rourke turned slightly, hands clasped behind his back. No. Posturing requires exaggeration. What you're seeing is baseline. Kothex's aides whispered urgently at his side, feeding him data streams that only deepened the damage. Predictive models collapsed in rapid succession. Every assumption, human hesitation, reliance on allies, slow response time, failed under new parameters. A delegate from the Oralise Hive broke the stillness. Why reveal this now? You could have ended the Dominion's advance before it began. Rourke answered without pause. Ending in advance doesn't end an idea. You don't dismantle aggression by proving you can kill faster. You do it by proving escalation is optional and costly. Outside, the human fleet shifted. Not forward. Apart. Their formation reconfigured with quiet efficiency, vessels sliding into layered positions that defied standard tactical geometry. No symmetry. No fixed center. Each ship adjusted relative to the others, forming a living pattern that adapted even as it settled. Kothex's display erupted with warnings. That configuration, one of his analysts hissed. It has no primary vector. We can't predict an opening. Rourke heard him anyway. That's intentional, Rourke said. Human doctrine doesn't prioritize winning the first exchange. It prioritizes ending the conflict. Kothex snapped toward him. You're threatening annihilation. Rourke met his gaze. No. I'm demonstrating irrelevance. Your fleets no longer decide outcomes. The chamber stirred. Fears shifted into something more complex, recalculation. A Concorde mediator floated forward, bioluminescent tendrils dim. Commander Rourke. The Dominion initiated hostilities. What is humanity's response? Rourke exhaled, slowly. This was the moment restraint mattered most. Withdrawal, he said. Confusion rippled. We will not pursue, Rourke continued. We will not retaliate for the provocation at H417. Human colonies will remain defended, but no further action will be taken. Kothex laughed, sharp and brittle. Mercy, then? Rourke shook his head. Closure. He gestured, and a new projection appeared, Concorde Law, cross-referenced with Dominion violations. Dates. Coordinates. Witnesses. Everything Kothex had assumed would remain buried. You came here expecting dominance, Rourke said. Instead, you've documented your own overreach. The Concorde doesn't need us to act. The mediator's tendrils flared. This evidence is substantial. Kothex stepped back, mandibles tight. You planned this. We prepared, Rourke corrected. There's a difference. Outside, the human fleet powered down its active sensors. A deliberate vulnerability. A statement without words. Kothex stared at the display, then at Rourke. You've turned fear into leverage. Rourke's voice softened, but only slightly. Fear was already here. You just pointed it the wrong way. The chamber descended into rapid consultation. Delegates whispered, conferred, recalculated alliances in real time. The Concorde had always claimed unity, but survival sharpened honesty. The mediator returned. By unanimous emergency accord, the Carthel Dominion's military authority is suspended pending full review. Kothex stiffened. You can't. The evidence is conclusive, the mediator said. Further resistance will be considered noncompliance. Kothex's gaze never left Rourke. This isn't over, he said. Rourke inclined his head. It never is. But it won't be this again. The Dominion delegation withdrew, their exit lacking ceremony, urgency replacing pride. As the chamber settled, the broadcast indicator dimmed from red to amber. The galaxy had seen enough. A delegate approached Rourke hesitantly. "Commander, what does humanity want now?" Rourke considered the question. For the first time since arriving at the spire, he allowed himself a fraction of honesty unfiltered by diplomacy. "We want the same thing we always wanted," he said. "To exist without having to prove we deserve to." The mediator nodded slowly. "And if others fear you?" Rourke looked once more at the fleet beyond the viewport, ships built by hands that learned endurance before invention. "Then let them," he said. "Fear fades. Memory doesn't." The session adjourned. Hours later, Rourke stood alone in the transit corridor, the hum of the spire steady beneath his boots. His wrist implant chimed softly. Admiral Chen's face appeared, tired but intact. "Colonists are calm," she said. "Repairs underway. No panic." "Good," Rourke replied. She studied him. "You changed everything today." Rourke shook his head. "No. We stopped pretending it wasn't already changing." The channel closed. Rourke walked on, past reinforced walls and adaptive lighting, toward a future no longer built on concealment. Humanity had not roared. It had not conquered. It had stood still and been seen. And across the galaxy, civilizations adjusted their understanding of the species born on worlds that tried to kill them every day, and failed.